Welcome to another video. This one's going to be a little bit different. I'm going to go into a deep dive on how to replace a water pump on a Massey Ferguson 2675 tractor. I need to look up the engine model so I can tell you that. I'll probably have that in the title or description as well. There's a few other things I have to do to this engine as well yet. I'll probably document those, possibly not as in-depth, or throw them all together. This time we're going to start on the water pump. To get started, you're going to want to start by draining your coolant. There's a little valve right here on the bottom side of the radiator on the right hand side of the tractor. We're going to open that up and let it drain out nicely. You may have to do what I have to do here. Take a pick, if you can see it. Just pull some of that dirt out. Clean that out a bit so it'll actually flow. Just like so, it runs to the center of the frame. You're going to also want to open your radiator cap, lay it to the side, so it drains much faster. Once you open your coolant valve all the way, on this tractor it runs down here, runs down below the main engine pulley to down there. It runs out. Make sure you collect it. This stuff still looks fairly good, so we may reuse it. This may also be a good time to do a coolant flush of your tractor if it doesn't look well. This coolant still looks phenomenal, so I'm not worried about that at all. Now that the coolant's draining, you can do whatever you want from here on out. Not from here on out, but for now until it's drained. It should also be 7 3/4 gallons, approximately. That's what the cooling capacity is, but if it's leaking, it will probably end up being less. I am not sure how full this coolant system was when I started draining it, but I figure we'll get 6 gallons maybe out of it. Now that it's draining, I'm going to start taking off hoods and shields, just because I want to have plenty of room when I'm taking this apart, and some of the other work I want to do on it. It'll make it nicer to film. In order to remove the hood, you will have to remove the air cleaner, pre-cleaner, but you will not have to remove the muffler if you are able to lift the whole hood up above it, which I am. If I'm not able to do it by myself, I have a dad and brother that can help. Over the years of taking hoods off of this tractor, etc., we have replaced a lot of our bolts with 1/2-inch bolts, or 5/16 bolts, which have the 1/2-inch head. Move this last bolt on the side. Climb up high and hopefully not fall. If you have a perfectly nice hood, you may not want to do this, because I banged it up a little bit, probably scratched it if it would have been a real nice hood, but this thing's faded incredibly much, so it doesn't matter all that much. The coolant has all but stopped draining. It's still dripping a little bit. I got about 4 gallons out. Once I pull it off, I can show you better where it was leaking. It was coming out of the shaft where the pulley attaches to run the pump. It's really hard to see right now. I'll pull it out and then you shall be able to see it. And back over to the passenger side of the tractor, the left side when you're sitting in the seat. There's an idler pulley here to remove two of the belts that run from the bottom of the engine, where the crank on the crank pulley attaches to the actual water pump up top with this one idler pulley, keeping good and tight. You also may want to remember to grease this pulley from time to time. We may or may not have, I'm not sure, but it may go bad if you don't. It has a grease cert on it. This idler pulley here takes an 1 1/8 wrench, by the way, and it should move relatively easily, unless it's rusted fast. The next thing that needs done on the left side of the tractor is we need to remove this coolant hose. In order to do that, I'm just going to loosen this hose clamp and slide it back. And I'm also going to remove this hose clamp while I'm at it. Should make it a little bit easier to pull off. There will also be some leftover coolant in this line. You take it off. So just be expecting that. I wasn't, and it kind of surprised me. We got it under control though. Next, you're going to want to remove this hose on the left side of the engine up top. Connects to the muffler to the air cleaner. Originally, this one is falling apart, so I don't have to do that. What I'm going to do next is loosen the mounting bolts for the radiator. Both sides. Both sides of the engine have this bottom bracket where it's mounted, and this top bracket. 1/2 bolt, 9/16 bolts. Then remove those. On the front side of the radiator, there's two 1/2 bolts. 1/2 head bolts that need removed. On the top of the radiator, there's this single hose. If you don't want to loosen this, take it off. May be pretty tough to take off if it was never taken off before in 30 years, like this one. The top of the radiator, there's also this line, return line maybe. You need to take that boot off. On the very top, there are 4 bolts here that I'm going to remove. So these lines, these 4 bolts are just to hold as a clamp these lines to the bottom of the, or to the top of the radiator. I want them to move freely, and these few wires here move freely. So we're going to take them out. Now the radiator will move freely. These bolts up here, by the way, 11mm socket. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 bolts up front to remove this plate. I just need to loosen it, set it up so I can pull that radiator forward. 11mm socket, or 7/16. I don't have a 7/16 socket right now because I don't know where it went. Someone lost it for me. Next, I'm going to take the 2 bolts out, one here and one here, for the front grille. I want to remove this so I can move this plate out of the way much better, and I can move this radiator Got to remove the ether line. This was tractor from back in the day when tractors had ether to start up in the cold. Or you had to mount your ether can right there. And also disconnect our sensor of some sorts. I'd like to say this thing is now ready to be moved. At least enough forward. That's all I need. Forward a little bit. Next, we're going to take 6 bolts out of the fan for the fan bolts. These are tough to get to, and they're probably going to be time consuming and fairly tight. Takes a 9/16 socket though. Going to take 3/4 inch wrench, remove these fittings for the power steering lines, top and bottom, for the plate that goes in the center here. I took that out. I did not film it. Now we're ready to move the radiator forward. I have my cooler radiator forward, I believe far enough, propped up. Not entirely sure why it's holding down so hard, other than maybe it's just heavier than I think it should be. I'm going to work on taking these belts off on the other side now. Then we can remove this belt. Depending on how old your belts are, it may also be a good time to change your belts, which is what we're going to do. Going to change all 3 of them. That way we don't have to take this apart in 200 hours if they ever go bad, or if they ever rip, because they are going bad slowly. On the right side of the tractor, we have the alternator. This has a separate belt going from the water pump down to the alternator. Just need to break this loose. Loosen it up a little bit so this can slide on the mount well, and we can take the belt off. Once you have your fan out, there's a spacer that comes out behind it. We'll just set that fella right there. There, out of the way. Then you loosen the pulley on the front with a 15/16 socket. Don't forget to get that tiny key out. Put it somewhere where you know where it is. The next thing that needs done is this coolant line boot thing. Gotta take that off, top and bottom. We're probably gonna replace this one. It is pretty bad shape. Just go right there. Loosen the top and the bottom. If any of your rubber boots look like this, I'd recommend replacing them. Get the screwdriver in there and it's immediately ripping. So I think I'm just gonna cut this one off. It's the last one. Yeah, I don't know that this thing would ever have been good enough to use again. That side's cracked pretty badly, as you can maybe see. I also found this piece of a seal just chilling in here, so hopefully there's not a bunch of those inside the engine. Next, you're going to want to take a 5/8 socket, loosen these, and remove these bolts that hold the mount to hold the muffler. I do not know why Massey Ferguson engineers designed this way, but it is kind of stupid in my opinion. Needs taken apart though. Next, I'm going to remove 2 bolts here and on the other side there. That goes to the top of this pump. I need to take this out. That's going to be it then. 9/16 socket right on that bolt. You do not need a fancy tool like this. This isn't even mine. I just love using it. After what's taken me, I'm going to guess 4 to 6 hours of work. Hopefully it takes you a lot less because you don't have to figure everything out as much. I am finally working on the actual bolts that hold the water pump on. There's 5 1/2-inch nuts on studs. I'll show you here. One there, one there, one there. 2 on the other side. I'll show you better once they're off. Also, if you want to look into the parts books for any AGCO equipment, Massey Ferguson is an AGCO brand. For anything we have tried, they have it. If you go on agcoparts.com or AGCO parts book or something like that, if you just put in AGCO parts book, search it, go on AGCO's official website, they have parts books for all kinds of equipment, of AGCO branded equipment. That's where I'm getting my parts book from on this. Extremely helpful. Extremely helpful. One more line on the bottom that I need to take off. Sensor wire right there that needs taken off. The right side of the pump. I've removed some muffler bolts. I think I'm going to put those back in, or on the muffler side of this mount. We'll have to see. There's 2 bolts here that I forgot about. I've backed them out to try to break this off, break it loose. Not sure why it's being so hard to break off, unless I missed something. I need to take a really good hard look at it. I don't think I did. You will also have to take your idler off. These 2 bolts here, and then there's one here that I broke off. This mount is going to have to come off for the exhaust. I'm going to torch those bolts off unless someone has a better idea, because my socket just spins on them. They're all rusted apart. All rusty and started working away. But next you want to test fit your pump and seals. Mine fits wonderfully. You're going to want to remove this piece to mount it on your new one. It takes 1, 2, down there, 3 bolts up here. That matches up right there. You cannot put it on backwards unless you're skilled beyond my skill. You also have to take this line off and then take this T-fitting out. This is a 1-inch wrench. This thing was a bugger to get this one off. Hopefully yours goes much better. You're going to want to pull this top elbow piece off. Just take spiral clamp, loosen it, you can pull it right off. Should be able to pull it right off. Then there's 3 bolts to take this next plate piece off. This is just to mount the pump to the engine. This piece also needs to come off. A little bit of a tap, that'll come right out. There's your thermostats. Congratulations, you have reached the 50% mark of this video, or of this project. I'm not sure where it's going to come in the timeline of the video, but we're halfway done. So clean up your tools a little bit, organize them, get some of the stuff together that you're going to need to replace hardware. I'm going to be using a little bit of anti-seize, and I would recommend replacing a lot of these boots. I'm not sure if I'm going to replace this one yet or not. I haven't fully decided, but we'll see how far we get. Also, if you like this video, please consider subscribing and liking. And thanks to our sponsor, me, we're able to do this video. If it weren't for me, I wouldn't be doing this video. Anyway, let's continue. I'm going to put new thermostat valves in. Set them in right there. Pick my gasket. That's going to work. Set that right here. Yep, that'll work just fine. Take some high bad, if not worse, than water to corrode. Especially if it's sitting. It corrodes, it doesn't rust as much. Tightening all bolts by hand. Don't strip them out. And you can kind of feel how tight they are. About right. Here's the part number for the gasket that goes here. Got action. There's the part number for the thermostats. Takes 2 of those and 1 gasket. Put some thread tape on your T-fitting. That should thread right in there nicely. You'd always use standard and then switch to metric. 18mm to remove this thermostat sensor deal. Temperature sensor. Plug right beside temperature sensor, 3/8. It'll come right out. Turn that plug right in there. Do not over tighten. Temperature sensor. Turn right in there. Once again, do not over tighten. Her up. I'm going to go start prepping surfaces to mount the pump on the engine. Take some sandpaper and clean up the rust. Put the water pump on, I filmed it. You put, just like the rest of the gaskets up here, sealant both sides, sealant on the engine block, gasket, sealant on the pump, slide it on. I also put a little bit of anti-seize on the studs, didn't put any on the bolts. Put your 5 nuts on and your 2 bolts up top, tighten by hand, not with an impact, that way you can feel how tight they are, so hopefully you don't strip it out as quickly. Put a little bit of anti-seize on the shaft, put the pulley on, take a hammer, also put cardboard up against the radiator so you don't damage it, hopefully as quick. Take a hammer, just tap it in nice and slow, take your time. Make sure it's still going on, just take it easy. For this bottom pipe, I recommend taking the fitting apart if it didn't come apart this way. The pipe goes here, then comes back over to here. Mine came apart up in here, which is fine. It's just incredibly hard to get it on with the pipe. Now is a very good time to replace your belts. So you're going to want to put your alternator belt on and tighten. You're going to also want to put your coolant line on. put hose clamps on. I opted to go with new hose clamps, so I can get them fairly cheaply here. And some of mine fell apart. I wasn't sure which ones, so I just got all new ones, because they're cheap enough. To put your fan on, there's a spacer, or you put your fan on, run your bolts through. I'm putting anti-seize on those as well. Make sure you have your belts on the proper groove. I don't, at the bottom. And I also have wrong size belts, but I need to get this going immediately. As soon as I can, I may change those belts again. I ordered the wrong size belts, and I think everybody's going to be closed by the time they can get the right belts. And I need this done within the next few hours, hopefully. I have the radiator in, this plate in. Do not forget to connect your lines on top and bottom. I got a bunch of this stuff done. I'm running out of time, so I just kind of did it. I already showed taking it apart well. I'm ready for that piece over there, the exhaust, to go in here, get bolted in place. Then shields. And I need to order another piece, but that's beside the point. Put your exhaust piece on. You want to try to make it fairly straight, because that's how straight your full muffler is going to be. Before I assemble anything else, it's just shields and clamps to keep these hoses together nice. And then I'm going to do some other stuff like oil changes to it. I'm going to fill the radiator with coolant and see where it leaks out first. That's how you replace water pump on a 2675 Massey Ferguson. I didn't put all the shields and stuff on. I have some other problems I need to take care of first, which will be one of the next videos probably. I'm not sure if I hit it or what, but the radiator is now leaking, so I'm going to replace it or fix it. That'll be another video though. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. See you in the next video.